We put too much pressure on ourselves sometimes, but we end up getting there at the same time.
Where is there? When you say we want to get there, where's there for you? What's your vision of there?
That's a great question. First of all, it's sad that we need to now go to places to get a sense of wellness. I think life has become so fast and fast-paced that right now we have to seek wellness rather than be able to live wellness.
Do you feel worried about that human connection that they could be missing?
I'm definitely worried. I have a teenage son now, so I know what I'm going through at the moment.
Welcome to the Knowledge Mindfulness Porch.
Thanks.
We're so delighted to have you with us today. And I'd like to start with a very simple question. Simple yet, I think, complex. Who is Fahad Abdulrahim Kazim?
That is a very deep question.
I know.
And I think the definition of Fahad changed quite a bit over the years. If you ask me in my early 20s, who is Fahad? Fahad is this go-getter, ambitious little kid who wants to prove himself, who wants to climb up the corporate ladder. He wants to achieve these big goals that he set for himself. Then in the 30s, it was very different. It was someone who, because of how my professional journey went, was trying to find himself in that professional world. How does he define himself? What differentiates him? How does he navigate the situation that he's in? But now in my 40s, now I get a chance to reflect over my past 22 years from a professional perspective and much longer time in this beautiful earth that we live in. It became more a deeper question of Fahad is someone who wants to build a legacy. Definitely, that's something that I've always aspired to do. But more than that, wants to enjoy it while doing that. Wants to make sure that it doesn't forget the important things in life. Wants to make sure that he enjoys the important moments in life with his family, with his friends, at work with his colleagues. It really evolved from something where it was never even a position I thought I would get to. But now that I'm here, I'm enjoying every moment of it.
I don't feel like from your 20s to 30s to 40s, I don't feel that you had so much of the struggle, because it's so clear for me now that, you were conscious at least about that transition and progression. But again, I would like to ask, who is Fahad right now?
So right now, Fahad is honestly, first and foremost, a family man. It always starts from that. Fahad is someone who is there for his friends. Fahad is someone who really defines himself by his actions and principles that has been taught and inbred in our DNA. Before anything else. I will never define myself as someone who is, a CEO of a company, a founder of a company. That for me is all secondary. I love what I do, but I see myself as a human being first, as a family man first, as a friend first, before I take any look at the professional side of it.
Do you think that part of you that sees himself as a family man, as a human, really had a role in the professional Fahad and the Fahad in the workplace?
I think if I was asked this question 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would have been a very different answer. I had a persona for work. I had a persona that was built to be something that I wasn't. I thought this is what I needed to act like. This is how I needed to act to get what I wanted. But today, it's very clear what it is. There are no more layers out there that I'm trying to shy away or shed away or hide away. Of course, everyone has a part of him that he will never open up, and that's something that's very personal and private. But generally speaking, the Fahad that is the persona at work is very similar to Fahad, the persona at home, at least from a principles point of view, at least from how I interact with people and how I want people to interact with me.
Yeah, and what a relief that would be, right?
100%.
It conserves so much energy. When you have that persona, it takes so much energy, depletes your energy just to even, act that role in many ways. And I think maybe what we want to know more about is how did you reach there? So let's start with, your professional journey. Let's start 20 years back, even your student journey. Where was that? Where did you start in your undergrad, let's say?
So I wanted to challenge myself, and I was fortunate enough to have parents that wanted to always let us choose what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it and get there. I always wanted to be independent or semi-independent at least, travel, see the world, try to live by myself, explore the transition, I think, right, into adulthood. So I went to Montreal. So I went a little ways away, and slightly colder temperatures as well. The first year I got there, it hit -40 with wind. So it
Wow.
was a real reminder that the heat of Dubai is one thing, but the cold of Montreal is something else. And I had 4 great years over there. I became a qualified accountant. I got my CPA at the age of 21.
MashaAllah.
And then I decided to move back to Dubai and start my work in a professional services organization.
And where do you stand now?
So now I am fortunate enough to have co-founded a hotel management company, a hospitality investment platform called Legacy Hotels. And it was a culmination of everything that happened earlier in my career, which got me to this point where it was, I had to go through fundraise, set up a company, build something from semi-scratch. It's something that I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't taken the steps earlier on in my career to get to.
Wow.
And now we are fortunate enough to be an organization that is not only in the UAE, we are across the MENA region, we're in CIS, and it's something I'm very proud of, that there is something in the hospitality world that's coming from the region and going outside.
That's amazing. Many leaders have the sense that things are changing, that things are moving faster than they can really realize even. And that pace of change with also so many disruptions that's, one after the other. How do you see that work environment being an environment with conditions to bring leaders like you out to the world? How do you see that changing?
The way I see it, it's taking small steps. For us, we know that we are in an industry that is a very competitive industry. We're competing not only regionally, we're competing globally in terms of our competition and comp sets. Yet we are able to live and breathe something that is quite fresh. So that's one side of it that I enjoy. The one thing that is going to the question of the pace that we are working in and the pace that we're living by, I think there is a very important element that we always forget about is being content. We have a business plan that we set, a goal we set for ourselves that we work through. It's very tempting sometimes to start pushing ourselves further and further and harder and try to do things that were not there, but there are opportunities in the market. But sometimes we need to take a step back and say, do we really want to do that? Let's do it in a very structured manner. Let's get there at our pace. Let's not let the market dictate us. Let us set our pace. And if we do it right, and if we do things to the attention of detail that we're talking about, we're going to get there. It might take longer, which I don't think is the case, because I think in the end of the day, we put too much pressure on ourselves sometimes, but we end up getting there at the same time. But let's do it the right way.
Where is there? When you say we want to get there, where's there for you? What's your vision of there?
That's a great question. So for me, there is twofold. I think there is one is from a size perspective. There's a target we've set ourselves of how big we want to get in terms of financial indicators and metrics and goals that we've set ourselves. But more importantly than that is where we want to get from a market positioning, brand positioning point of view. I want to be known as the employer of choice. I want to be known as a partner of choice. I want to be known as someone who was a conduit to really put a bright light on regional hospitality. That's where I want to make a difference. On the financial metrics, there will always be goals that we set ourselves. There's an exit strategy, there is this, there is that, we want to grow tenfold or whatever the numbers might dictate us to do. But more importantly is the reputation side for me. And reputation is something that is earned rather than anything else. We can't buy reputation. You need to earn it. And we work hard, tirelessly, to be earning that reputation that will be our success.
I think when you say that, what comes to my mind is really the quality of relationships that you are building. And the quality of relationships usually comes from your presence and how you are there in life in terms of the values you hold. And these values are not talk, they're not words and nouns, they're verbs. So how are you actualizing those in virtues, and how you are dealing with your customers, with your clients, with your partners, and this you can't fake, right?
Correct.
But again, it takes me to that big question that in a blurry kind of vision where leaders usually depend on their foresight of what's coming and, this is where we want to be, we live in what I call the perfect storm. So things could get blurry because there's so much uncertainty. We can't predict what's coming. So how do you tackle that foresight when things get blurry to you? What do you do?
So, two things. Again, there is the practical side of me and there's that philosophical side of me as well. From a practical perspective, I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by great people. And I loved this quote when I heard it. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? Yes. And that's the philosophy that I live by. I have great people that do great work. My team is one of the best, definitely from a professional perspective, but more so and more importantly on a personal perspective. I have great people that are around me. So we put a close eye of what's happening around us in this world. It is a chaotic world we live in, right? There's a lot of uncertainties that do come by. We can always plan for one thing and the next morning some news will come out where you need to not only course correct, you need to probably completely change, tear up a page and start working from scratch again. So we do that quite well. So we have a strategy team that keeps an eye on all the markets that we're in. Right now we're operating in 10 countries, in over 20 cities, and that is only going to grow from there on. But on a philosophical perspective, the other thing that is important is we're in a human business. It's a human-to-human interaction that we're in. Hospitality is all about that connection. And that connection is multifold. It's a connection between me and my colleagues, not only at the corporate office, but also on the property level. Mm-hmm. It's between me and my guest that comes through that door, and it's between me and the owner, and me and the overall players in the ecosystem, the partners that we have. So it's all about those kind of connections that we build. And we build connections that I believe are genuine connections. It's not a, win, lose, win, whatever you want to say. Yeah, it's always a win game somewhere, Everyone is playing a game to get some sort of benefit, either a benefit and a loss or a benefit and a benefit, but it's always talking about from that perspective. For me, and something that a philosophy and a principle we really live by is I want to make sure I can sit down, have great conversations with the person on the other side. And once you have that connection, that human-to-human connection, everything else works. The good and the bad works. If you have bad news to take, you know that it's things that can be solved. You can work around them. And if they're good news, of course, everyone's happy to have good news. So there's no way around it. But it's all about that. That philosophical approach to me is just as important as a practical approach.
That's great, because you're kind of having that integrative approach that I think is more suited to this chaotic world we're talking about. But again, we have AI that's coming in the middle right now. I mean, that's a game changer in many ways. So, how do you see that? How is it going to change the hospitality business, in your opinion?
I embrace these type of challenges when they come through. I approach it from two ways. One is people will still want to travel and stay in rooms. So I think that side of the business is safe at least, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So on the bigger picture, the industry, I think it has nothing threatening it per se, right? But on the other side, if I don't have the right enablers in the technology space, I'm losing a lot of ground to others. So I think that's where we balance the two. The difference, probably from my perspective, is not to have a stubborn approach, but have an open mind. And I always say this, I'm not a tech company. I understand the advantages of tech. I understand the strengths of tech, but I'm not a tech company. I'm a hospitality company. I'm the people business. I'm in the business of making sure that the people get a great experience. But at the same time, I know the power of tech. So I need to find the right partners on that side to complete me and complete my offering.
Yes.
So it's always having that open mind, having that conversation, being smart enough to ask the right questions, seeing the benefits that come from this, and then seeing how we can implement and enable it within our network and ecosystem.
I really like your approach. I think that brings me, when we say the word hospitality, what comes to my mind is a term that is so much used nowadays, which is wellness. And everyone is into this wellness, arena, let's say. But what is wellness for you in the hospitality? Because some people think of wellness as physical wellness, and most of, like 90% of people, when they go to a place, they think of the physical wellness. How do you approach wellness in your hotels and, thinking, let's say?
First of all, it's sad that we need to now go to places to get a sense of wellness. I think life has become so fast and fast paced that right now we have to seek wellness rather than be able to live wellness. But wellness comes in multiple forms. Again, it's something that we're embracing quite closely. So if I'm to speak our hospitality jargon, we have the different classifications of hotel: budget, mid-scale, upscale, luxury, so on and so forth. And I think in each of these categories, we need to make sure that we're doing the bare minimum required to be able to give our guests the right experience of stay. So, for instance, for me, it's very important to have a great fitness center in our hotels, regardless of which classification of hotel you're staying in. This has become something that our guests are seeking and chasing. But then we take it a step further, depending on the property, is where we need to make sure that the food is well taken care of. We have options over there that are healthier options that people are able to enjoy food without compromising on the quality and taste and so on and so forth. So that becomes the second element that we're focusing on. The third becomes things like a good night's sleep. The right type of bed, the right type of blackouts, the right type of temperature in the room to make sure that the sleep element of it is important. And these are the ones that we're talking about, is the basic requirements that goes across the portfolio. But then we take it a step further. We are now at a stage where we are actually creating a wellness-focused brand that lives a 360-degree experience of wellness. That is from the lighting that we use, that is from the kind of treatments that we'll have, that is from the water that you drink, that is from... So it's taking it a step further. There is something that we've looked at very closely, and we had started discussions with, was a group that had done a fantastic job around the space. It's taking them to a completely secluded area when they're able to get a screen detox happening at the same time as well, making sure that they are in one with nature, where they are able to really live, breathe in a place where the pace is just completely different. So again, this is the beauty of when you're able to put the practical, knowing that there's a strong business model over there, but with the philosophical as well, because this is what the future generations need. I think there is a need to disconnect. There is a need to take that step away and take a chance to breathe.
Yeah. I think what resonates in your words is the word beauty, nature, and all that. Because when we talk about disconnection, in a way, we're talking about connecting with our inner beauty. And being in nature reminds us of that inner beauty that we have. We kind of missed in our, I don't know, marathon in our lives in many ways. But also, like you said, why do we need to always go to wellness places to have that? So, what is your, let's say, tools, methodology, ways of having wellness in your own life, in your very busy life?
I always loved exercise. So exercise was always part of my life. I started working out when I was in my early to mid-teens. I was part of a basketball team, and I saw the benefits of that, team activity, and so on and so forth. And then I started going to the gym. So I always understood the value of that physical exercise and the gym space and so on and so forth. But then when we got to a place in our lives when work was more important, the professional life was more important to us, I was fortunate enough to come to a point during COVID. Lockdown either made you or broke you, right?
Or boom.
It depends on how you
Yes.
made use of that time. And for me, those 5 weeks, it gave me a chance to really start assessing, reflecting on what's important in life, taking on meditation, breathing. Started doing the simple exercises of 7 minutes of breathing every morning, and saw the value of just those 7 minutes that you have for yourself first thing in the morning. When no one else is awake in the house, you can go to a secluded room, close the door, the streets are quiet, there's not a single noise, and just give yourself that 7 minutes to just breathe and try to clear your mind. And as everyone would say, the first few days, it was just impossible. In a couple of seconds, your mind is jumping somewhere, life related, work related, issues related.
Never ending.
Never ending. But then slowly, and the power of the mind is just a beautiful thing. You're able to start being in control of your thoughts, of your emotions, and so on and so forth. So now, when you ask me the question, I have a regimen that I do every morning. My day starts at 5:30. I go do my meditation first thing. I do my 10 minutes of just breathing exercises. From then on, I transition into my workout. So I get my workout done around 6 to 7. And then I do a bit of reading every morning. So that's the me time I have. The 2 hours before my day starts is me time. And I find that so refreshing, and I'm able to recharge before I get the day started. So once I've taken care of my needs, then I can go and tackle the world on that side. And once I got into the habit of doing that routine, it became a beautiful thing that I can't let go of now. So even when I travel, I still have my early mornings to myself. You know, even if it's a family trip, I have those early mornings to myself. I start off with the breathing, then go down to the gym, and then come back up to the room, and then we start the day with the family.
Yeah. And you saw the difference in your work, in your relationships, in your
100%.
mood, in your composure, in your calmness, in a lot of those characters. I mean, did you really see that
100%.
and feel that shift?
And again, because it also gave me a tool that I can utilize throughout the day. So when you're able to have these small little tools, and again, you know, you have these podcasts, and I love mixing up my podcasts. It's from business to crime to wellness, but it gives you a reflection of things that are interesting. And in the wellness and longevity space, a lot of it is simple tools and exercises that we can really infuse into our lives, into our daily routines. Doesn't take time, doesn't take much out of us, but it's just being mindful enough to remember that we need to do these things.
Yes.
And I've fortunately, since COVID, been able to do more and more of this.
I think it really kind of shows me in real matter that I see your knowledge maturity has really evolved over time. And what I mean by your knowledge maturity, your understanding of yourself has evolved so much to use it to engage with the world in a much powerful way, and your understanding of the world to reflect on it and really kind of expand that self of yours. So that cyclical movement is what we call evolving your knowledge maturity. And I see that so clearly in your life journey, in your conscious, continuous effort to bring those two sides, the tangible and intangible, into play together and integrate them in a way that shows so much in your personal and professional life altogether. When you talked about wellness, you mentioned the quality of food.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that triggered the quality of food for our thought. So I don't know, but when we kind of rethink the hospitality business, we rethink wellness, why not integrate the quality of the food for the thought as much as the food for our stomach and for our body in many ways? How do we bring that into the equation and to value such a thing as much as we value the physical, the sleep, everything? That experience is the dimension that I feel sometimes is missing from that wellness equation.
100%. Probably our generation was the last generation to really value the interactions that we have with people, right? And again, when it comes to the food for thought, it all resonates, at least for me, with beautiful interactions with people, the open-mindedness that we go into these conversations with. The new generation is more reliant on media, phone, screen time, so on and so forth. A lot of benefits that they're able to do things very quickly, but again, they're missing a very important aspect, which helps us, and things that we crave for is the human-to-human interaction. And I think when it comes to thought, that's a side of it that we need to start taking very seriously.
And I think that's a bit tricky, because when you think of the next generation, or you think of Generation Z and even the younger that's coming, I just feel a bit worried. Do you feel worried about that human connection that they could be missing? How is their work life is going to change, and how is that going to affect everything? Things like their identity, their values, their direction, their compass in life. How do you see that happening, and how do you think, not even from the professional, even as a parent, as a father, are you worried, and what are you going to do to tackle that?
I'm definitely worried. I have a teenage son now, so I know what I'm going through at the moment. But the part we have to play is to make sure that we balance their activities, their world, the realities of the world that they're living in. What I try to do quite a bit is encourage his extracurricular activities that involve activities that are physical, that are community driven, that are friends driven. So it's real human to human interaction. So for instance, he's now picked up the hobby of fishing. And I went all in that hobby. I said, you know what, this is a beautiful thing.
Why that? Why fishing in particular? What do you think? What would that bring?
Interest from one thing, patience,
Yeah.
which is something that is missing in the generation that we see, as well as working together as a team. Because when they are out there together, encouraging one another, having that healthy competition, that, you know what, oh, I caught this many, how many did you catch? Let's work together in getting this. And then I see the pictures that come afterwards. This is our catch. This is what I caught, but this is ours. Our friends, we did this, we're going to go cook. It's a beautiful thing because it reduces the time that they sit in isolation. And there's a lot of that time these days, right? On screens, on games. Sadly. We used to isolate ourselves for very short periods of time. And we used to get, for me at least, it was always like, I need people around me, after a while you need, but this generation can go days without that interaction. So when I see that, and when I see those activities come up, and the other thing that he's very passionate about is mixed martial arts. Again, something that I really encourage because teaches discipline. It teaches the ability to have that self-confidence. It teaches a lot of these skill sets that we used to get taught in different ways in our households from our parents.
How? The
It
old
was
ways.
the old ways was a conversation. The old ways was having that discussion or experiencing it in real life, going to the grocery store with our father and him negotiating and him doing this and talking about principles and disciplines, and there was that time. It was organic. It was very organic, and there was time to do that. It was a slower paced society that we lived in. Today, because of the realities of life, it's way more difficult for us to have that quality time, and unfortunately, when it's limited, you try to compensate. And sometimes the compensation is probably not teaching the right tools and principles that you want to instill. So when there are these other methods and there is other tools that are made available, I try to use it in the smartest way possible. Having that conversation after a fishing session. What did you learn? How long did it take? What did you do because you weren't catching fish and your friends were catching fish? How is it? So those conversations start leaving a bit, at least with them. They're like, oh no, it's okay. You tried. It didn't work. Next time, make sure that, is there something better that you can do? So these little lessons that you can leave with tools that are available to you out of passions that they have, I think is a great way of bringing it all together.
It's a great combination, I think, especially the conversations you have after that. I see that's the tool for them to absorb the lessons that you want them to absorb, and how are these later manifested in their behavior, communication, practices in life. And I think that's very powerful, Fahad, very powerful. I see that as an amazing, combination that you use. But also, it brings to my mind that time we spent with our grandparents, those moments where you had all these extended families come for Eid and, all this. We had so much of that. And I think our kids and grandkids are having less and less of that. So, as you said, how do we kind of try to combine at least the old with the new? And how do you do them in a way to balance both, to give them the best of the two worlds? Because again, we are in a world where they always talk about rethinking, reimagining, re. And I understand where this rethinking comes from, because again, we're embracing a very new world.
Cool.
So, old models don't work anymore and all that. But how do we know what to let go of and what to not let go of? I think this is the tricky part that I want to hear your perspective about.
I think a lot of what we have around us is great, is positive. Fortunate to be living in a place, it's such a cosmopolitan place where we're around so many different demographics, nationalities, human beings from different walks of life. There's a lot of lessons that we can learn from that. And that's a huge positive and a strength that we have, right? It's a blessing to be able to do that, live harmoniously and work together and interact together. That's the beauty of it. But at the same time, we're also fortunate that we are in a region which is very proud of our traditions and our family values and all that. And I think this is where we need to probably do a better job as parents now to continue with a lot of these traditions that are out there. The importance of the elders in the family, the grandparents. I used to spend a lot of time in my grandparents' house. Every Thursday we know that all the cousins used to get there, and that was our day out, and it was a non-negotiable. As much as I can today tell a small fib and say, oh, we do a great job in doing that, but we don't. It's a learning that we need to continue improving on. We try our best. We have some traditions that we do a great job in putting together. But in other ways, unfortunately, we come short. We don't get to see the extended family as much. So this is something that I need to reflect and work on better as a father, to make sure that at least I'm instilling these values in that next generation.
And I think that boils down to what matters to you. What is important really in your life right now, or even in general? So if I want to ask you, if we're sitting 1 year from now, what are the decisions I'll make right now for the future I want in 1 year? What would that be, Fahad?
It's a loaded question.
Let's focus maybe on one decision. How would you, think about it? Maybe talking about personal, professional, whatever is a priority for Fahad.
From a personal perspective, I think one of the things that I would love to focus on is to build a tradition with my son. It's something that I've been thinking about, but I haven't been actioning. Life always comes in the middle of that. But building a tradition where, we have an annual trip that only a father and son go on. It's creating our own little adventure where, you carve out 3-4 days, you go somewhere, a shared activity, maybe it's a hiking trip, maybe it's to watch a football game, do something together that we know that this is an annual thing that we're going to put in place. It gives me a time to bond even more.
Yes.
I think this is something that I've been putting off, not purposefully, but again, I haven't prioritized it, but it should be a priority. And this is something that hopefully a year from now, when we sit down, I can tell you that I have done it. I have started that.
I think that's an amazing point because in many of the conferences that I attended, a lot of successful businessmen, many, the first thing they say, we regret that we did not spend this time and that time with our kids, or we missed on a football match or this. And you can't go back in time. Many times in our conversation, when you mentioned philosophy, and it just brought to my mind what knowledge mindfulness advocates in the new way of learning. And we call it knowing because it expands our spectrum of knowledge. And in business schools, you would see titles like, Faculty of Business and Economics. And it's always so narrow. And how do we bring philosophy, humanities into the equation of business and not only numbers, And I think this is how we look through the lens of knowledge, my trifocal lens of knowledge. Mindfulness is how do we see that new world with a new way of learning, new way of leading, a new way of living successfully, all integrated together because there's hidden connections. So we're always thinking of leadership as a standalone discipline, right? But if you want to think leadership is relationship, and again, through the lens of knowledge mindfulness, it's all about making sense of the world out there and the world in there. And how do you bring them together in ways that enhances your experiences, whether your inner experience or your outer experience, and what you can give the world out there. So in many ways, your legacy, when you started this talk, the legacy, and I've been through so many reports from banks and financial institutions, and they always talk about the legacy or what we want to leave our kids. We want to leave them this amount of money and that amount. And I see so much focus on this financial skills and this. What about the impact that you want out there on the lives of people around you? And would that a part of legacy that you aspire for?
100%.
Yeah.
I've been asked a question about what's the most important thing to me. From a professional perspective, it's always about making sure that I've been good to my colleagues and the people around me. And I've repeated this line before as well, but if my colleagues are happy, it will resonate in how they approach what they do, which will mean that the guests will be happy. And if the guests are happy, you will create something that is non-tangible, where they get a feeling that there's something, the positive energy, the smile on the face, the conversation that we had. You start building loyalty. And when you build loyalty, the money will come. And the returns will come, and the owners will be happy. But again, it doesn't start off over there for us looking at the money trail. It's starting off over here, which is the most important thing and something that is in our hands and something that we can control. So definitely it starts off with having that impact with my colleagues, with the people that I'm responsible for across the organization, starting from our corporate office, going all the way down to the properties and anything in between.
Because it's ripple effect. It's kind of a cyclical movement,
Correct.
as you were saying. It's really not focusing on the tangible as much as the tangible will come eventually.
Correct.
If that genuine human vibe is there and the goodness, the beauty that we were talking about that comes from within. Like you said, you can't fake that, and people feel you and feel that. And I think once you have that kind of connection, that's priceless. That is kind of priceless. I want to leave this conversation with a space for you to ask me one question. If you would ask me one question, let's say about knowledge mindfulness, what would that be? What would you be curious about?
For me, I think the $1,000,000 question that I would ask is, what motivated you to start spreading the message of the knowledge mindfulness?
I think I go back to what you mentioned when the COVID times came. I think this was the time for reflection, and it gave me space to think. I was a professor for 20 years in the field of knowledge management. And at that time, when, everything was on hold, I was thinking, and I felt that this is the time to rethink this discipline in ways that would help me and help others expand our worldview of how are we going to use this discipline in ways that is more suited to these unconventional times. That was the, tipping point for me. The first disruption of COVID opened my eyes to what's coming. And I just felt, okay, if we are just going through a perfect storm, what is going to anchor us as individuals, leaders, teams, organizations, communities? So that's where that concept, I coined the concept of knowledge mindfulness, because I felt the word management in turbulent times does not fit. It's all about control. It's all about command. Control, command in such a world doesn't work at all. It's really about leading your way first into a path that no one kind of hit before. And that's the creativity part. But also you have the adaptability part.
Of course.
So how do you fit the two together? And that's when I realized transformation and innovation, they come together. These are not separate. So this whole fragmentation that we learned through our life, through schools and universities and all, these are things that we need to rethink. Everything you talked about in your journey.
Correct.
The building blocks that really brought you to where you are now. How is it going to happen to the new generation? That's where all my thinking started, to find those hidden connections between all these disciplines, and how do we bring them into play to work for the other, to work for leaders out there, especially younger leaders. Because we talk about, things like unity, togetherness as a philosophical thing.
Correct.
But what if it wasn't? What if it was something that can start from a tangible thing, as small as what are you putting into your mind from the quality? You see, the quality of food and the quality of food for the mind at the beginning.
Correct.
And how it affects every dimension in our body. But we never realize it, and we never realize the toxic environment that we're living in. There's so much out there. And how do you have that sense of the quality of this is a credible source, this is I can take from, this is I can take and use and build on? there's so much noise. There's so much noise. And like you said now, even the younger generation, how they come to take information from their peers, from sources like musicians and, what they aspire. So how do we compete with all that? This is the tricky part. And that's where knowledge mindfulness is all about, bringing more knowledge mindful leaders out there to shine their presence. So their presence is that genuine human connection, because it comes out naturally in them, because they have built that with time also, not because of their presence, because that's how they anchor themselves.
Of course.
And this shines into that. So this is what
That
we're
is
hoping
beautiful.
for. And I want to thank you so, so much for being with us here today, because I think you're a great example of a knowledge mindful leader, even without putting the label. But I feel you are a great example that I think a lot of young leaders out there can aspire to, to look up to.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here, and best of luck. I loved having this conversation, and honestly, I leave with a big smile on my face, and I feel I've gained quite a bit from it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've gained so much. Thank you for all your teachings and all that. Thank you.